Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome all the new subscribers and the existing ones. So in today's video, I'm making a pork roast in the slow cooker, and I'm going to turn it into pulled pork sandwiches. So I have a hard time finding hamburger buns. So in today's video, we're making 100% whole wheat hamburger buns. So that's what we're doing in today's video. I thought I would just give you a little look at the roast going into the crock pot here. All I did was sprinkle it with salt and pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and some paprika, as well as some chicken stock at the bottom of the crock pot there. So to start, you want to have 1 cup of warm water. I'm taking my thermometer here, my meat thermometer, and you want to have it no hotter than 105 degrees. So as you can see here, mine was a bit hot. So all I did was dump some of it out and add a little bit of cold water and then retest it again. It is a little bit high right here, but by the time you put it in the bowl and you give it a good whisk, it usually brings the temperature down quite quickly. When using yeast, you don't want to have the water too warm. If you have it too warm, I don't recommend anything over 105 to 110 degrees. It will kill the yeast and then it won't raise properly. So it's a very important step. So I'm just retesting it here and seeing that it's below and it's perfect temperature. So now let's just add the rest of the ingredients. We're going to add the yeast. I'm using instant rise yeast for this. You can use dry active if you like. You just need to have more raising time and let the yeast bloom before we add the rest of the ingredients. Because this is quick rise yeast, you do not need to let it bloom. You can just add all the ingredients and then go right into the rising process. So I added about 2 1/4 teaspoons of instant yeast. And for the sugar, you want to add about a tablespoon of sugar to the mix. Next, you want to add some salt, about 2 teaspoons of salt. You don't want to skip the salt or the sugar in this recipe. It gives really good flavor to the buns, and it's not something you want to skip. So I just like taking a whisk and blending all of those ingredients together. If you're using dry active yeast, this is where you would let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes and let it bloom. But since we're using the instant rise yeast, we're going to just go and continue adding in the ingredients. For the flour in this recipe, it calls for freshly milled flour. I have no capacity to do that, so I'm just using 100% whole wheat flour that's already ground. And in the recipe, it called for 3.5 cups. While I was making this recipe, that was way too much flour. So I end up only using 2.5 cups of whole wheat flour. And it ends up making the texture of the bread perfect. I would adjust depending on your measurements and stuff, but I would go according to the texture of the dough rather than how many cups exact, because if you were to put all 3.5 cups in, the dough would have been really, really, really tough. When I'm mixing doughs, I like to take a spatula and just make sure that the center of the bowl is really getting mixed properly, and make sure that everything is mixing nice and evenly. So now you're going to add 1 egg to this recipe. You want to add it when you added about half the flour. Right after you add the egg, you want to add about 1/4 cup of olive oil, or you could also use avocado oil if you like. And then continue to mix the dough until it forms a nice ball. make sure you stop periodically to scrape down the sides and the bottom of the bowl to make sure everything is mixing nice and even. Now I'm just adding in the last half a cup of the flour and continuing to mix it. Once it gets to right around this stage where the ball starts to form, you want to give it a good mix for at least 8 to 10 minutes on medium speed, just to get the gluten activated within the flour and to really loosen it up so that you get nice fluffy buns rather than really dense, hard buns. The mixing process is quite important for getting really nice fluffy texture. So I'm just stopping here and feeling the texture of the dough just to make sure I don't need any more flour and to really feel how well it's mixed together and how fluffy and aerated it is. So now I'm going to take some olive oil and I'm going to pour it into the bowl, and I'm going to coat the bowl with the bottom of the bowl and the sides of the bowl with olive oil, and then cover the ball and let it raise. I'm using the bowl covers that I made in a different video. So if you're curious how I made these bowl covers, you can check out the other video that I have where I show you in detail how I make them. You want to let this raise for about an hour in a warm surface area. After an hour, your dough should be about double in size. I'll give you a good look here. It's about double the size it was. And we're gonna take a pastry cutter here, or if you don't have one, you can just use a knife. And we're gonna cut this into 8 even pieces. This recipe, it makes about 8 burger buns. So if you need more than that, make sure you double the recipe. Now I'm just taking each piece and I'm pinching the bottom and I'm rounding it out a little bit and pinching the bottom together and rotating it on the counter to create a bun. Just keep rotating it on the counter and it'll turn into a nice ball, and then you can just place it on your parchment paper on your baking sheet and then just continue the process. The dough doesn't really spread out very much, so you can place them fairly close together. You want to have enough room to flatten them a little bit, but like having them fairly close together is fine because they don't spread out a lot. Then you just want to take each piece of dough and repeat the process. Just pinch the bottom, form it into a ball, pinch the bottom pieces together to make sure that everything's nice and sealed shut, and then just rotate it between your forefinger and your thumb, and just making it nice and round on the counter, and then just place it on the pan. And then right here, oh, maybe not. Yes, right here I flatten them a bit. You want to flatten them to about 1/2 inch, and because later on we're going to raise these again and they are going to puff up a bit, and they do puff up in the oven as well. Flattening the bun will give it a nice burger bun texture and shape later on. I don't recommend flattening the buns with a rolling pin. I feel like that would flatten them a little too much. You just want to pat them down with your fingers and probably no more than ½ an inch. Otherwise, they're not going to puff up as much as you would like. I decided to make this recipe because I really do have a hard time finding options for anti-inflammatory diet at the grocery store. I would prefer a whole grain bun, but I have yet to find any whole grain buns at my grocery store. So the next alternative was 100% whole wheat, and nothing better than homemade buns, right? Now you want to cover these with a tea towel, and you want to let them raise again for another 30 minutes to an hour, just depending until they're a little bit doubled and puffed up in size. So right here, they've been raising for that long, and you can see how they've puffed up, and they look really good. They look great. So I'm just taking an egg here, and we're going to make an egg wash for the top, so they get a little bit of color on top while they're in the oven. For my egg wash, I just used a beat up egg, but you could also add a tiny, like a tablespoon of water to it if you like. But you just want to take a basting brush and you just want to baste each bun thoroughly with the egg wash. I'm just giving you a nice close-up look at what the dough looks like, all nice and raised. These buns were delicious. They were the perfect option of what I was looking for. I will definitely be making this recipe again. This recipe was mainly just for me. My family usually uses brioche buns, so I needed an option just for me. So I actually froze half of these. I froze probably 6 of them, and I just pull them out now whenever my family has burgers or something that I can't eat. I will pull this out for an option for me to have. For the oven temperature, you want to make sure your oven is preheated to 375 degrees. And you want to bake these for about 15 minutes. So this is what they look like coming out of the oven. Nice and golden brown, a little bit browned on the bottom. They were perfect. And the inside, it's really nice and moist in the inside. With any bread products I make, I like to take a little bit of butter and I like to put a little bit on top just to make sure the crust of the bread or the bun is nice and soft. When I don't like to get my hands dirty, I'll take like a Ziploc bag, as you can see here, to do that with, just so I don't get butter all over my hands. Just a little trick that I do sometimes. I'm going to cut into one of these here in a second and show you what it looks like in the inside. So I want to thank everybody for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is a nice close-up view of the inside here. I hope you guys make this recipe. It was delicious. I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.